Right. So our next segment is about some questions, 5 simple questions, if you will, around 9/11. And the reason we're asking questions is because when you do ask a question, it turns on a part of the recipient's brain that is different than being told something. It, we hope, causes people to consider the possible answers for these questions. And maybe in that process, they'll have something occur to them that is of value as we learn more. And we do believe we're going to learn more in the coming days, weeks, and months about this and, very frankly, other topics, just like we have from the announcements from Tulsi Gabbard and others, Anna Paulina Luna and others, as they begin to disclose things that we've wondered about for many years. So let's begin with this. Question 1, how did an airplane made of aluminum cut through structural steel? And this gives you a sense of some of the parts of the Twin Towers. This is the outer casing, I believe, being put in place, but there's also heavy structural steel that was in the center of the building. We'll show you that in a picture in just a moment. So just consider that question for a moment, and let's take a look at some of the video that was captured both during the event and has been surfaced recently regarding the event. Here's a picture from ground level of the second plane impacting the South Tower, and we're going to give you some facts on it as we get through this. So if we take a look at that flight, that was flight 175. It's a Boeing 767. It was on its way based on its schedule from Boston to Los Angeles. It's important to consider the primary wing components are aluminum alloys, and some of the hardest of those are actually in the structural components. They're inside the wing, not necessarily the skin on the outer side, but they were meant to make the wings more rigid. And you have to ask yourself, how is it possible that this would have been able to cut through structural steel? And you can see it entered pretty close to the center of the building on this side, and then part of the explosion appeared on the opposite side of the building. So it went through a substantial portion of the building. How is that possible? Especially when you look at things like this, where another type of an airline ran into a light pole made of apparently also of aluminum, but perhaps more strengthened, and it actually cut through the wing. So wouldn't this have maybe cut through the wing rather than the wing cutting through the building? Don't know. Here's another picture of the inner workings of the building. This is during construction, and you can see that a lot of the solid structure, the structural steel components, were centered in the middle of the building where the, for example, elevator shafts and so forth would be. And then there was also structural steel on the outside. Let's take a look at another view of this. This is actually taken from north of the two towers, just before the second impact. Watch this closely. This is from a news helicopter, and you can actually hear a bit of dialogue, both immediately following the impact, and then they receive some instructions. Listen to this.
Wow. That apparently does look like it is in the other building at this point. Back off. They're telling us to back off.
They're telling us to back off. Now, one part of this story that I didn't mention at the beginning, I'll simply offer here, is I was actually due to be in New York City on that day. Because of another client's need, I ended up assigning someone to go in my place to New York City, and they were actually in the city at the time of the attack. They were actually up in Midtown, but we didn't know. And I was actually in another city, and for hours we could not contact them because many of the cell repeaters were on top of the Twin Towers and were almost immediately put out of commission. So you can imagine the worry that went on for a number of hours as we tried to locate my colleague. Ultimately, did find out everything was fine and the person was safe, but holds personal meaning for me based on the risk and the worry that happened over those hours. All right, second question. This is the side of the Pentagon. And the Pentagon was impacted by Flight 77, a Boeing 757-200 that was scheduled to go from Dulles Airport to Los Angeles. Again, primary wing components or aluminum alloy. That plane carries and the specific plane carried two Rolls-Royce engines weighing 11,900 pounds each, basically 6 tons each. And they're relatively large engines, and there's only 2 of them. Where are the structural components of any part of the plane? Where are the wing components? Where's the tail? Where's the fuselage? Where are seats? Where are bodies? Where is luggage? Interesting questions, certainly. We're going to show this is in part an animated video of what the impact is said to have looked like, and you need to then ask yourself those questions. Where are all these components?
A 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall plane through this obstacle course.
The aircraft, before striking the Pentagon, reportedly executed a 270-degree downward spiral, and yet Hani Hanyour was known as a terrible pilot who could not safely fly even a small plane.
No seats, no luggage, no bodies. Nothing but bricks and limestone.
Okay, let's take a look at this too, just to make sure we understand how large this plane was. The wingspan is either 124 or 134 feet, depending on whether the plane had these little winglets at the ends that many people have seen. It also would have had a tail section almost 50 feet wide. And of course, the tail itself that is, I believe, also 30 feet in height or so. Where would all these components have been? You normally would have found these laying around in many crash sites, and yet where are they? Perhaps we get a clue from this report, which has seen very limited coverage, especially in the years following 9/11, but was broadcast on CNN within minutes of them arriving at the scene there in Arlington.
As military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. And Jamie, you got very close to where that plane went down.
That's right, Judy. A while ago, I walked right up to next to the building. Firefighters were still trying to put out the blaze. The fire, by the way, is still burning in some parts of the Pentagon. And I took a look at the huge gaping hole that's in this sideway, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around.
So here's another video taken by the Fairfax police as they did an aerial reconnaissance of the damage, within a short time following the impact on the Pentagon.
Wow. Okay, so you get the picture?
Get a picture, right, Ken? Ken, picture up, 10 please.
straight down and from the inside where they can't see. I know the smoke's kind of hard to deal with, but close up so they can get a good look.
Okay, I'm going to flip to infrared because the smoke isn't bothering the infrared, okay?
We want to just back off, take a look at the impact area, see what areas are hot from either side, and
Okay, so again, you hear this report that they can't find and they can't see evidence of plane components and so forth. All right, let's move on to our next question if we can here. Flight 93, also a Boeing 757, was traveling from Newark to San Francisco. Unlike the other planes that we just saw, there were no buildings involved in this. It crashed ostensibly after a struggle between the passengers and the hijackers, and it crashed in next to a field and into a portion of a forest in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Let's listen to, bear with me for a moment here. Let's listen to this report. I'm going to jump ahead to a particular testimony that I think is quite telling.
I expected to see fuselage, remnants of a plane, which I didn't see anything but pretty much smoke and some fires.
I saw absolutely no signs that an airplane was present, no matter what direction I looked.
You didn't know that a plane had crashed there. You had a crater, and the initial crater was probably 15 feet deep, but we didn't have big plane parts laying everywhere.
It looked like the plane hit, but there's not a lot of evidence of the airplane, and I've described it a lot of times as basically a knife through hot butter.
So again, missing evidence, missing components, which begs the question, where could they have gone if in fact a plane impacted there? There would normally be, and if you look at many crash sites, you find leftover evidence that shows what happened, at least as so far as portions of the plane left. Not in this case. And so we've heard that that was testimony from both authorities and one of the FBI residential agents. Next question. Why would World Trade Center Building 7 collapse instantly, essentially, in one fall and completely, having not even been hit by a plane? None of the planes hit this building. It's also known as the Solomon Building. And it appeared to fall in a pattern very reminiscent of a building being demolished. Many people said it fell in its own footprint. And there's two parts to the Building 7 question. Let's talk about this for just a minute. We're going to watch this video.
I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion.
Back from that building before, what you're about to see again here on videotape, knowing that fire could not be fought because of the instability of the structure, because of the fire that had burned since shortly after 9 o'clock this morning.
Dana Tyler is joining us in the...
Okay. Now, finally, the other question that revolves around Building 7 is this. The building, again, was not hit by a plane. It fell after 5 o'clock in the afternoon and was reported to have fallen by a BBC reporter while it was still up. We're going to see this in just a moment. Let's take a look at this.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers.
Now, this is very interesting. We're going to skip back and forth here for just a moment, and then we're going to show you the end of the, we're going to try to show you the end of her report. But look over her, what we see as her right shoulder, her left shoulder, we're looking to the right, just beyond her head. That, in fact, is the Salomon building. They are reporting that it has already fallen, yet it is up. How is that possible? And if it in fact was up, how, why, and what would cause them to report that it had fallen when it's still visible in the frame? Watch what happens close to the end of her broadcast here. Just a minute. I'm going to skip forward. And she continues to report on the circumstances, and then this happens.
I don't think people can sink in to people what's happened.
We haven't for the past hour or so heard much from the people of Manhattan. You're with them there. I mean, what are they saying tonight after this catastrophic attack?
As I said, many just cannot believe this has happened. And I've seen, you know, big burly men and women with tears in their eyes today, shaking their heads, wondering what on earth is going on. There was a sense of panic. Our reports from the scene were of people just absolutely horrified. And I've already seen some photographs of that a man took down in the downtown area, and it looks like the aftermath of a huge atom bomb or something, just full of debris and of like a white carpeting of snow from all the dust and rubbish that had fallen. I think people are still numb, and I don't think people are talking about revenge in that way at all yet. I think people are still too traumatized. We don't know how many people have been killed. We can't even put a figure. I think when you talk to people on they daren't even say how many people might have been killed and injured. And I think that feeling, until the idea of the devastation, people do.
There at the bottom, you can see the 47-story Salomon Brothers building has also collapsed, yet it is still visible over her shoulder.
Don't really know what to say or what to think. I think they feel the bubble of their security as being in America has definitely been popped. This city and this country will not be the same. But they don't really know where to turn. That's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today,
and all of a sudden they begin to lose their signal.
Flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line.
Isn't that interesting? That would be lost just at that moment after they put the Chiron up with the notice that the Salomon Brothers building had come down, and yet it was standing directly in the frame. So where we go with this next, one of the questions many people have said is, oh, well, you know, the buildings came down because of the fires in the Twin Towers when we go back to Towers 1 and 2. I looked up via Google AI this afternoon and asked it, how hot does jet fuel burn? And this is the answer I got. I didn't even ask about steel. It said jet fuel burns in the range of 800 to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit in open air conditions, with higher temperatures possible inside a jet engine's combustion chamber or in oxygen deprived environments. The temperature is not hot enough to melt steel. Not hot enough to melt steel. So for those who say, well, gosh, the fire must have melted the buildings. Well, that would explain where the fire was. The fire was up on in one building up on floors 90, I think, and above, and then the other building in floors 77 and above. But what about below? What would have caused the failures there? So as we go forward, we're going to, I think, learn more. Tomorrow, Tucker Carlson on the Tucker Carlson Network will air a 5-part series that talks about 9/11, and I have a funny feeling that the information they will bring forward will, in many ways, add to any questions that we've posed today. And we encourage folks, if you can, to review this. Now, for folks that are members, I guess, of Tucker Carlson Network, you could see it all at once. But they will be airing a 5-part series. I think they're going to do it over the course of 5 individual weeks, and for folks that aren't members. So, again, we respect the work that Tucker Carlson has done on a number of topics. This looks like it may be the next one, and we encourage folks to consider reviewing that as it reaches either X or the Tucker Carlson Network. So that's it for 9/11 for the time.